What's going on, everybody? It's Young Man. Today is March 20th, 2026. Today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin strategy and MetaPlanet, the three topics we've been talking about and are going to continue to talk about. I appreciate you clicking on the video. I also appreciate everybody that has subscribed to the channel. I really appreciate the support, trying to spread the message, and I'm going to continue to do that. So I appreciate all of you. Today, what I'm going to be talking about is why Bitcoin is a freedom technology. I'm going to get right into that. I might talk a bit about strategy and MetaPlanet later into the video. But first, I want to describe what I mean by freedom technology. What I mean is a technology that allows humanity to advance at a rate quicker than ever before. Something that comes into being and allows humanity to prosper at scale. And examples of this would be writing was a freedom technology because it unlocked the ability for humans to store knowledge over time. We were able to have spoken words and stories to pass on to new generations before writing, but once we understood how to store that information and stories in physical form beyond just words, spoken words, we really were able to maneuver through time differently, and it's allowed for us to have civilization the way we know it. Another example would be air travel. The airplane is a freedom technology because it made humans able to travel across space at scale and in a way that took way less time than by boat. And again, it is a big part of the way civilization is today. Without that, things would look a lot different. The final example I will give is the internet. The internet allowed for the transmission of information at the speed of light, and this is it's very critical that we have it. If we didn't have it, the way things would be and how much information would be kept from the public would be terrifying. Knowing what we know with the internet, you could imagine what things would be like without the internet, and it would likely be a lot less sophisticated and generally worse. So these are three examples of freedom technology. Today, I'm going to make the case why Bitcoin is a freedom technology and why it might be the most significant freedom technology that we've discovered as humans. Um, there's a lot of different routes that I could go talking about this. If you're new to my videos, I typically try to keep my videos as free flowing thoughts. I don't really have a plan when I start trying to describe what I'm trying to describe. So if I'm all over the place a bit, that's just the way that I make my videos. The first thing I will say is Bitcoin can be thought of as the separation of money from the state. We, as humanity, experience the separation of the church and the state in different times and different places. And initially, when that happened, it led to the Great Enlightenment. It also led to the formation of the United States and the migration of people in Europe who were in uh, countries that did not allow separation of church and state um, to America for that reason. Freedom and liberty and what America has represented over time, a lot of that comes from this idea of freedom of worship, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, these things that did not exist in a lot of places. America was thought of the land of the free for this reason. So I believe that Bitcoin is similar to the idea of America back in the day, um, because it allows you to take your stored time and energy and move it somewhere elsewhere that the state does not have control over it. And it, your belief system and your religion is very important, but I believe that it's more fundamental to, and I'm not saying it's not a fundamental aspect of your life, but your time and your energy is should be the number one value. That without your time and your energy, you, the rest doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have the freedom to express yourself, the freedom to worship in whatever way it is that you want. None of that matters if you don't have the ability to store your time and energy. And money is the way that we store our time and energy. And without Bitcoin, you're storing your time and energy in something that is manipulated and under the control and the influence of the state and actors that do not have your interest in mind. So that is the first thing that I want to mention. That's a very, uh, it's a big deal. It's kind of the reason why a lot of people get into Bitcoin. It provides them opportunity and it provides them security. So if you think about that idea, and then if you're in the United States or in Western Europe or in somewhere where the quality of life is pretty good, um, average or above average, you have a lot of human rights and basic freedoms. Uh, if you're in that situation, imagine that you weren't in that situation. Imagine you were in a war-torn nation. Imagine you were under a very oppressive government that took a lot of your basic freedoms from you. It would be extremely important for you to come across a technology that allowed you to remove your time and energy from that system. Not only if you had to flee the country that you were in because bombs were falling from the sky, but also if you were stuck there and your currency was being debased at an accelerating rate, and the money that you have today doesn't represent half of what it represents today, a month from now. That is the situation. That is why Bitcoin matters. That is the situation that a lot of the world is in, and that is a situation that you could one day be in. I also will mention fundamentally uh, an idea that is extremely powerful. This kind of ties to the idea of freedom of religion and spiritualism, but a very important idea for our experience is the idea that we are in some way connected to the whole and we are in some way coordinated alongside the organization of the whole, the system. If you believe that you are part of the intelligence and the underlying plan, that's an empowering belief. In a word, you could call it faith. Um, Faith in a higher power that has you in its plan, whether that's a God or whether that's a system or whatever that is. It's an empowering belief. You can do different things with your life and you make different choices if you have that belief. And I think naturally humans do feel that way. A lot of people feel connected to the whole, but we are taught to not believe that, subliminally and in a lot of different ways. In this day and age, people are taught you're not in the plan and things are organized in a way to keep you down and you shouldn't even worry about that. And if you do want to be connected to the plan, you need to come to me, so or my church or my organization, and I'll show you how to be connected. That is the general way things go. Uh, but I believe that we are within the plan, and I think Bitcoin represents that idea. Because if an open system and a network like Bitcoin becomes the rails that goods are exchanged and time is stored and the way the world runs, if Bitcoin becomes what I believe it will become, you as an individual can hold a piece of that network, and then you are represented within the network. It's like early philosophers talking about democracy and how if the individual cannot influence the collective and influence the organization, then it needs to exit the collective and exit the organization. That's a basic idea, and that's true to this day. And various ways have been experimented with to make that possible. But I think Bitcoin is the first thing that really represents that idea on paper and in practice. And this isn't to say that if you don't uh, hold Bitcoin, that you're excluded from this system. I do recommend you get some Bitcoin, but if the system is ran by the individual, it allows for a way different dynamic and a way more positive dynamic because fundamentally the collective is made up of the individual and the individual is made up by the collective and one cannot exist without the other. And an idea that I think about a lot is that a community that leads the individual can only be effective if the individuals made up the community. If you think about modern governments, the community is not empowered by the individual. It's empowered by a system that is above or outside of the individual. If the individual truly is leading the community, then the community can lead the individual, and it can be this relationship where both are benefited by each other. It's something that usually can only exist in the mind. There's not really a lot of evidence of a system like that. And I think Bitcoin for the first time will possibly, if we don't mess it up catastrophically, I think it can allow for something like that. And the simple reason why is because it has never been the case that the top is made up of people that got to the top from the bottom. The top has always been the top, and systems have always been top down, and there's no ability for the bottom to get to the top, except in very rare cases where 1 in 1,000 people find their way out of the bottom to the top. But then they're concerned with the bottom anymore. But Bitcoin is going to allow for people who are at the bottom to become wealthy and powerful. It's going to allow for that to happen and at scale, enough of them to where they can then be part of the top and they can then lead the bottom out of the bottom. And I'm not talking about any sort of I'm not talking about the traditional understanding of this concept, communism. That does not work and never will work. No adult that takes himself seriously believes that would ever work. It's been tried and it does not work. What I'm talking about is true capitalism, true free market, true sound money based economics that allow for truth to exist. If something's not based on proof of work and not based on truth, it can't exist within the system and it will cure itself from the inside out. That's why Bitcoin is freedom technology, because it's going to allow the system to create a system from within it. And the Ponzi debt-based system that we exist within it has no place, and it's going to eat itself and destroy itself because once something real shows up to a world made out of imaginary um, fake systems that are propped up by propaganda, money printing, and just general lack of solid foundation. Once something real with solid foundation shows up and exists, it's just a matter of time until that becomes the system. Like I do believe that that's how it's going to play out. And I don't know how long that's going to take. The only thing that I can say is that you want to be on the right side of the transfer. You don't want to be long government bonds, long fiat. You don't want to have cash under your mattress. You want to have Bitcoin and you want to be interested in MSTR and you want to research sound money, even gold. You can probably imagine that I prefer Bitcoin over gold, but if you're a skeptic of Bitcoin, the way you protect yourself from being part of the collapse of the old system is you own Bitcoin, gold, silver, MSTR, these things that the old system isn't going to print to try to keep itself alive because the process has already started and it's going to accelerate with time, but they're going to send the value of the currency down. That's It's physics, it's math. That will happen. That's not a prediction, that will happen. And like I keep saying, Bitcoin is freedom technology because it's going to be the technology that allows me to not get my life ruined by this sinking ship. And if you think about the idea of a sinking ship and there was life rafts, the people who found out that the boat was sinking, the moment that it started sinking, the people buying Bitcoin in 2009, they're going to get life rafts fairly easily. There's plenty to go around. They're going to get them. But as time goes on and the minutes pass as the ship sinks, the demand for these boats is going to go up and up and up. And more people are going to know that they need a boat. And more people are going to flood towards the guy that's handing the life rafts out, and they're going to be willing to pay more and more and more. It's going to start as I'll give you $100 to get one of those rafts, and then a couple minutes will pass. It's going to turn into I'll give you $1,000 for one of those rafts, and then more minutes will pass, and it'll turn to I'll give you anything that you ask for one of those rafts. That's how the price of Bitcoin is going to go from where it is today to 10 million and then to 100 million. And so if you don't align yourself at the front of the line for the life raft, all I can do is pray for you. And that's why I'm making these videos. I believe that I've noticed a freedom technology, and I don't want to be the only one that gets off the boat. So I'm trying to spread the word here. I appreciate if you listened. This was definitely a bit of a rant today, and I didn't even mention a lot of the ideas that I wanted to talk about, so I'll be making another video like this soon. Um, the last thing I'll mention is I didn't mention strategy or meta planet in this video, but quickly I will. If you thought of the life raft example, if there was a company that was hoarding rafts as this process was happening and they bought up 5% of the supply of rafts, they're going to be able to charge a lot of money and make a lot of money in a couple years from now, or in the example, in a couple minutes. So it might not be a bad idea to look into MSTR stock and Metaplanet. And it also might not be a bad idea to buy some Bitcoin and put it in cold storage. None of this is financial advice. I don't know the future. Nobody does. I'm simply trying to find out what I can do to protect myself and to have security as time moves forward. So I appreciate everybody that has subscribed to the channel. I appreciate everybody that clicked on the video. And I'll be making another one soon. So thank you.